Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're talking about how businesses use data and how data will drive the next wave of business reinvention. To discuss that, I'm joined by a very special guest. With me today is Shawn Bice, President of Products and Technology at Splunk. Shawn, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You know, and I do have these big important questions, but first I need to make sure, Shawn, are you keeping up with the holiday froth now? We're right smack in the dab in the middle of it. These days are moving really fast. Are you up with it all?
Oh yeah, in our house we've got two boys that are home from college, and the holidays have definitely begun in our home for sure.
That sounds like a lot of fun. The two guys home from college. That itself is a lot to keep up with.
It
Uh,
is like we go through we're new empty nesters, so we go from it's so great to have the kids home, but then once dishes and stuff is laying around, we're like, well, maybe you guys should go back to school right now. So.
I like that. So, all right. Before we talk about how data will drive the next wave of business reinvention, let's take a look at the level of comfort or adoption with data analytics currently. Are companies struggling with data, or do you see relative success from where you sit?
Yeah, it's a really good question to start with. I think the answer to your question, are companies struggling with data? Some are, and some people really truly are struggling, and others are thriving. And I think what's changed it all is COVID. Some people, if you were hesitant about technology, and then COVID shows up and changes the game. I don't think anybody is confused on the importance of data and technology today. And if you look at a company like Walmart, a few 100 million people coming through that system, Walmart pre-COVID might have been where you stopped on a weekend to get things, but Walmart today, like post-pandemic, all of a sudden those 200 million shoppers are now online, and
Hmm.
they're looking for essential goods to live. Same thing with Tesco in the in the UK. Who would have thought this to be true? Hey, one day, what if everybody had to get their groceries online? Like that would
Right.
have been maybe a special thing, but now it's kind of how people live. Or you think even of the University of Illinois, now all of a sudden they need to have a safe campus, and they need to do contact tracing right now. So at the
Right.
end of it, the way I would answer that is, companies that have a strong data foundation and they're able to say yes to these new scenarios and move quickly, those are the ones that are really thriving. And the ones where every time you're trying to move fast and do something new, you're told no, no, no. Those are
Mhm.
the folks that they have a tougher hill to climb.
Well, that's interesting because I was going to ask you. I mean, what is a key challenge you see for companies in data, and maybe that's it, where the company culture is not really fully embracing data, or what is a key challenge as you see it for data analytics?
I think the key challenge is it's embracing what's new. Like I always say to folks, you know, especially in data, don't let familiarity become a blind spot that stifles innovation. And why would you say that? Why does that matter more in data than compute or networking? And the reason this matters is if you kind of think of the history of data from 1970 almost all the way to 2000, if
Hmm.
James, if you and I were going to build an app, odds are we would have built it against a relational database. It could have been Oracle, SQL Server, or DB2 back in the day. But at
Right.
the end of the day, it was a relational database. And then
Hmm.
you kind of think about this explosion of these new types of database, let it be a key value system or a graph database that deals with highly connected data, or a time series database. Like today, there's over 380 different data management systems, and that's
Hmm.
different. So at the end of the day, to your point about like if you look at your staff and you've got tenured people, great, because they know the business. But when I talk to CIOs, I'll never forget this one time. I met the CIO. This was pre-COVID, and we were just about to walk into this room, and this particular person was all about embracing new and new business scenarios. But he stopped and he goes, "Hey, look,
Hmm.
we're going to walk in here. And he goes, see that person right there? That guy's not going to change. Like he's going to
Mm.
dig in, and he's only going to want to do things the way we've always done it. So I'm going to warn you about him. And he pointed out a few other folks, but at any rate, he was very intentional about finding change agents. And if you can do that and embrace the new, it's amazing when that tenured, hey, I know how things work around here, but I'm willing to go new. It's amazing how many people will follow.
It is amazing. It seems like that one simple truth, make sure you're embracing the new, is it makes all the difference. You've got an interesting theory about data driving the next era of business reinvention. How do you see this evolving?
Yeah, I think data is going to evolve from being a record of, what happened, to really being what you need to look at all the time to help you make things happen. And that's a huge change. Like, in the past, if you really thought about data, it's like, well, okay, let's go look at it, see what happened. And now today, if you think of businesses that, I don't know, take Disney Plus, like who would have thought Disney Plus? Who would have thought, if you said to me 2 years ago, like, hey, do you think you'll see a major motion picture at home instead of going to the theater? I would have kind of laughed and said, no way.
Right.
But now here we all are, consuming content, at home, and think about like how much data they need to collect just to understand if 100 million people pause and restart, and are they getting the right quality of service. So I really do believe we're going to move from data being a record of what happened to all of a sudden it is now making things happen.
You mean streaming data, real-time streaming data? Is that what you're talking about in particular, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. I mean, all data,
Mhm.
just using Disney Plus as an example, but, it really is in every aspect. Let it be in medicine, where now you're looking and, they're creating digital twins for, doing research on medicine. It's
Right.
incredible. It leads to these breakthroughs, to a classroom, and how you engage students. It's just all of this data that exists now really truly is turning into that fuel, if you will, that turns everything into doing.
It's amazing on exactly that same point. I think that you're very right, and that people may not even understand. I think we're sort of just at the beginning of this new sort of, I would call it a data revolution, relating to what you're saying. I think data is obviously going to be very much, ruling our lives, changing our lives, helping our lives so much more, say 5 or 10 years from now than it is even right now. Agree, disagree?
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, frankly, my kids don't really understand what I do for a living, but the way I
Right.
explain it, the way I explain it to them, it's like, look, you're going to enjoy medical breakthroughs, and it's, what you're going to see, I'll never forget. Let me back up here for a minute. I remember sitting with my grandmother one day,
Mhm.
and she, in her lifetime, she really did see horse and buggy to
Wow.
somebody landing on the moon. She saw black and white TV to color TV. And
Right.
I don't know why I remember this, but I always thought, like, what might I see in my lifetime that is as
Right.
revolutionary as that. But we are in the middle of one of these massive transformations. So I kind of tell my kids, like, look, the healthcare you're going to get, the education you're going to get, the experiences, the way you learn, everything in your life in some way or another is going to be benefited by data. So long as it's governed and you maintain privacy the right way, but it really could lead to transformational times.
Hmm. Well, I think, and one of those big transformational trends is edge computing. I'm amazed these days at the number of headlines and the amount of interest I see in edge computing. It seems to be enjoying a particularly rapid upswing. And I think possibly the year 2022 might be the year of edge. I mean, what's your sense of adoption trends here?
Oh yeah, that's a great one, and I think you're right on this one. So the adoption trends, the thing that I would pay attention to, that I'd watch here is, from an end user's point of view, 5G is a big deal. So
Mhm.
the more, people walking around with a 5G connected device, the amount of data that an application is going to be able to interact with on your device is unheard of. It's almost like you could think of it as, imagine when we all used to go to work and you are connected to the network on the fastest bandwidth. Now, I'm not talking wireless, like that's pretty much the way the world's going to function with 5G. So I would pay attention to that as it relates to end users. But the other trends, look at the telcos. All the telcos right now are, the Verizons, AT&Ts of the world. They're building very specific edge capabilities, where, they're bringing more compute and storage into these facilities and then making them available to others. And then the final one I would say is, look at Google, Azure, and Amazon. All of them are investing in edge solutions and building blocks. So if you add it all up, it's very rare that you see things come together like that. That tells me that there is huge opportunity around the corner for edge.
Yeah, I think it's almost like, cloud has gotten all this buzz all these years, and cloud is far from mature. I mean, cloud is still growing really rapidly, but it feels like edge is going to either compete with or merge with or get bigger than cloud. I mean, the two aren't really in competition, but it seems like cloud has been the star of the show and edge is this little dark horse, but it feels like edge is going to really be competing with cloud as much as possible.
Yeah, it either competing with cloud or maybe edge just becomes a natural extension to every enterprise,
Right.
and,
Right.
sometimes folks will say to me like, hey, can you remind me again what edge means? Like, what is it all about? And, the easiest way to think about it, if you're unfamiliar with the concept, imagine an autonomous car, and it's having to navigate traffic in real time. That car is not going to emit all that data to the cloud to process the data, make a decision to slow down or speed up, and then push the decision back down to the car. All of that computation needs to happen right there at the source of the data. And, so when you look at those opportunities and the type of applications that you can build, I mean, think of Caterpillar and these massive machines and all the decisions there. Or I don't know, maybe one day robots are actually doing medical procedures because they're perfected, and
Wow, yeah.
reliable. I don't think that's fake. I actually think that could happen. So, all these different applications, are quite real. But, at the end of the day, there's so much data today, there's more than I think people know what to do with, so if
Right.
you're able to bring stuff together, get new insights out of it, you're in business.
Interesting. Well, I'd like to kind of close things out by getting your sense of the future. If you look in your crystal ball, the future of data analytics and of edge computing, perhaps even as they interrelate. It's a tricky question. What's the future of edge and data, maybe together or separately? Either way, Shawn, what's your take?
Yeah, this one is always a tough question to answer. I kind of think of it like this, when you look into that crystal ball, one way to look into that ball is to ask yourself, what's not going to change? Like, in the next 10 years, what is not going to change? Well, I'm pretty sure a customer is never going to come up to me and say, hey, can you make my data system less secure? I don't think it's ever going to happen. Or could you make it harder for me to govern access control? I don't think any of those things are going to change. So in that regard, hey, if those things aren't going to change, those to me are investments that you absolutely want to continue making. So when I look into the future, I definitely believe it makes a lot of sense just to first look through the lens, what's not going to change, understand that, and then when you're making technology decisions, you can see who lines up with you on that regard, because security and governance and ease of use, these are table stakes. And then I think the spirit of your question also is, well, what is net new out there? And I would end with this, since this pandemic, maybe some of the lemonade in it is I think businesses in every industry segment are trying to reinvent themselves. They're trying to create new customer experiences. And these ideas are literally springing up each and every day. So maybe the new part of this future is, if you came from a world where things were just slow and, like you were very careful about doing something, maybe those days are behind it. Maybe the future is you're able to get new insights out of data so fast that literally any new thing that you want to do in your business, you can. And what's super different is instead of that taking a year, maybe it takes weeks. And I think that is where the world is going to end up.
It's going to be fascinating to watch. A lot of interesting stuff, Shawn. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise today. Have a great holiday, and I'll hope to talk to you in the new year.
Thank you, James. Have a great holiday.